Okay, so 8th grade rotations. So there's two parts to this. One is the easy part, which is how to actually do the math for today. And the basic idea is to copy this table down somewhere and then use this table for every single question. And you'll get all of them right. It's simple, it's easy. As long as you have this table, rotations are super simple, super easy. I don't have any other words besides those two. The problem is, and it tells you, if you memorize and create your own table, you can use it to answer the questions. And that's true. If you can memorize this table, the table makes things very easy. Problem is, if you look at the rules, these rules are all very close to each other. So your chance of memorizing this table correctly 6 months from now is not great. So what I want to do, I want to spend a couple minutes on, is try to explain how these rules come about. And that way, if you can remember how the rules came to be, you can recreate it yourself. So when we rotate things, or we just take our shape and we just turn it, there are a couple rules that the points have to follow. So I'm going to say every 90 degrees of rotation, the coordinates. Okay, then two things happen. Number one, the coordinates, the x and y values, starts with a V, swap places. And we'll explain what that means here. And if you look at the rules, you see at 0 degrees you have xy, that's your original. We go to 90 degrees, see instead of xy now it's yx. That's what we mean here. So every time you go 90 degrees of rotation, x and y switch places. And so if you follow the rules down, you see it goes xy, yx, xy, yx, xy. Okay? Okay, the second part, every 90 degrees, the coordinates move one quadrant. And this is a much bigger deal. So every time we rotate something, every 90 degrees, it takes a point from one quadrant and sends it to the next. So if I use this little grid here, just for an example, I can get a pen here. So if I put a point right here at 2, 3. So if I wanted to rotate that 90 degrees clockwise, remember clockwise is going like that. If I'm just going 90 degrees, it's going to move one quadrant in that direction. So it's going to go, I'm going to erase all this. It started in quadrant 1 up here. 90 degrees from now, it will be down here in quadrant 4. Okay? And then we just have to remember, what are the rules in quadrant 4? Well, every point there, all the x values are positive, and all the y values are negative. Okay? So if we put all that together, so I know if I went 90 degrees, x and y need to switch places. So instead of 2, 3, it's going to be 3, 2. Okay? But since it's going to be in quadrant 4, it has to follow the rules of quadrant 4, which says x has to be positive and y has to be negative. So this becomes 3, negative 2. Okay? And instead of putting actual numbers there, if we just said x, y, just some generic point in quadrant 1, if it went 90 degrees clockwise, we know x and y have to switch places. So it's going to be y, comma, x. And we know since it's still going down to quadrant 4, that the second number has to be negative, because whatever is in our y value position has to be a negative number. So if it's a 90 degrees clockwise rotation, it goes from xy to y negative x. And if we go back to the table, we can see that's exactly what the rules say. Okay, I know that's kind of a lot to take in, so you might want to like stop, think about what just happened here. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. So remember these two things. Every 90 degrees, x and y switch places, and every 90 degrees it moves the points one quadrant over. And then you just have to remember the rules for each quadrant. So quadrant 4 we said was positive, negative. If we went 180 degrees over to quadrant 3, everything there is negative, negative. And then if we went 270 degrees in quadrant 2, that is negative and positive. Okay. The other thing to keep in mind, instead of having to remember them separately, you'll notice that there's like 3 columns here, because counterclockwise, if we turn, instead of going around to the right, if we went the other way, counterclockwise, you're still going all the same places. You're still going to quadrants 2, 3, and 4. You're just doing it in the opposite direction, which is why 270 degrees clockwise, which would take us down to quadrant 4, is the same rule as 90 degrees clockwise. So really, you could think of all these problems as far as rotating clockwise. Just anytime you see counterclockwise, you just know that 270 is really 90, and 90 is really 270. And 180 is the same for both, because moving 2 quadrants to the left or 2 to the right gets you to the same place. Okay? Speaking of 180, why not? We're right here. You'll notice the rule says it goes from xy to negative x, negative y. And that's because we said every 90 degrees, they swap places. So 180 degrees, they swap places 2 times. So they flipped, and then it flips back. So you end up back at xy. And since it's down in quadrant 3, everything's negative. So xy becomes negative x, negative y. Okay? Hopefully that helps you out. Hopefully you remember some of that 6 months from now. Okay. But like I said, as far as today, really all you need is this table. So have this written down. It's going to give you all your answers. So our practice ones, JKL rotated 180 degrees. What's the representation? Okay, so 180. So we just go up to our table. And it says 180 negative x, negative y. So we pick that answer. It gives us this picture over here. Who cares? This picture does not matter. If it tells us what our rotation is, that's all we need. Where the points are makes no difference as far as picking the rule. And that's all these questions. Okay, next one. 270 degrees counterclockwise. What is the rule? So go back to the table. 270 counterclockwise is y negative x. So we pick y negative x. Nothing to it. And then there's a couple, it just asks us to actually put the points. So if it's 180 degrees, so we know that x, y goes to negative x, negative y. I don't know why I put 9, I was getting ahead of myself. So we're just going to flip all the values. So 4, negative 9 is going to become negative 4, positive 9. Really, 180 degree rotations are the easiest. You don't have to think about it. It's just the opposite of both values. 270 clockwise for our last example here. So we go to our table. 270 clockwise, here's our rule. Negative y to x. So we say xy goes to, I already forgot what I said, 270 clockwise, negative yx. Even I use the chart because I don't want to have to think about this. I don't want to make silly mistakes. I just look at the chart every single time. No one's going to think less. Okay, so I know I'm going to flip these two numbers. So instead of 5, 2, it's going to be 2, 5. And I need the opposite of that first number. So that's going to be positive 2. And then X stays the same, so that's going to continue to just be 5. Okay? So just be a little bit careful if you actually need the points. Really think about how the signs, which of those signs is actually changing. And there you go. So the rest of these are all multiple choice. So use your table. Hopefully you copied down the table at this point. And then don't make any silly mistakes, because a lot of these, they all look the same. So just choose carefully. All right. Bye.